It's been 10 years. 10 years. Dragon Age Inquisition came out when I was coming home from school, excited to see what it had to offer. I'm now 26 years old, rarely excited about anything, and eternally hoping the next game will ignite some of that lost joy for just a little while. Anyway, Goodbye, the show where I tell you about a thing and whether or not you should actually buy that thing. Today, that thing is Dragon Age the Veilguard. Dragon Age the Veilguard had a difficult choice. After a decade of patience, a decade of expectations, and a decade of games changing entirely, Mass Effect Andromeda included, Dragon Age had a difficult choice. It could either bunker down and really dig into the roots of the series, lean on what made it what it is, and risk the complexity of the series to resonate with enough returning and newer fans, while hoping it didn't turn too much of a newer, modern audience away. Or it could adapt, change, and shape itself to what would be best for today. Yes, many fans of Origins might have a tough time with that, but it would give the series a bigger chance at returning to wider praise in today's expectations for gaming. Simpler, perhaps, but bigger than it's ever been. This decision becomes immediately clear with the direction of the combat, something that many people hooked onto when it was first shown off. The Veilguard leans into an action-heavy approach with strictly real-time combat, a limited ability action wheel, and no direct control over companions and other characters. Now, this actually works really well, and it doesn't detract from the direction of the series at all. Is it Origins? No, but Origins is still Origins, so let's take the Veilguard for what it is. The actual issue is, really, the camera. This camera f***ing sucks. You'll be leaping around with everything moving quickly, and in, yes, real time. Giant monsters, lots of enemies, and dramatic environments. It's very fast-paced, but unfortunately the camera doesn't quite keep up. It can swing, pull, zoom, or just look at the sky while you're trying to manage a really difficult situation. It's certainly not the first game to have this issue, but it really needs some work sooner rather than later. However, the shift into action is still successful, and honestly feels quite suited to Dragon Age. Characters will have unique item pools that upgrade, so, you know, that sword with a fancy name +4 can become your sword with a fancy name +5, and all that good stuff. And each character has greater specializations, which plays into the importance of elemental weaknesses in the Veilguard, and it all comes together to make everyone's role in the field feel significant. However, while the quests are more mission-based than roaming the open world, this change does not sacrifice depth. It's a rough start with too much exposition front-loaded, and early quests are too short and lack any real substance. By the time I had to make my first major decision about which city to help, I wasn't even sure which one was which. But in time, these settings grow on you. There are still quests dotted around the map, which vary in how involved they are, how much combat they feature, and whether they set off a chain of other quests. Thankfully though, there are no tedious, collectibles, filler content to bloat these maps out. Each quest has a story to tell, and this is where Dragon Age shines, even if it's not as bright as a certain other recent high fantasy RPG. This quest design is backed up by clever use of the companions. Throughout the game, all 7 have a personal arc to complete, as is the way of things in these squad-based RPGs. But these take 3 forms: quests, conversations, and outings. The first is your standard quest like any other, but conversations are longer, more interactive cutscenes, and outings are basically walking simulators. Some of these quests are the highlight of the Veilguard, especially the way Tasha's and Emmeric's deepen the Dragon Age lore, but others don't always feel great. You can occasionally feel the writing being forced through the pipes of gameplay convention, rather than being given the freedom to flow and have everything else built around it. So we come to the elephant in the room. These quests are not on the level of Baldur's Gate 3. In a way, it's a harsh comparison, I know. Baldur's Gate 3 is the current frontrunner for Game of the Decade, and that's not a bar Dragon Age needs to be held to. But out here in the real world, they are both high fantasy role-playing games built on character dynamics and witty banter. In a post-Baldur's Gate 3 world, the cracks in the Veilguard begin to show. So after waiting 10 years, how long will you actually be playing Dragon Age the Veilguard for? Well, probably not for the next 10 years, but more accurately, you'll likely be looking at around a 50 to 60 hour experience if you're looking to take the time to enjoy the little things, get to know the characters, and explore what there is to explore. Completionists will likely get an extra 10 to 20 hours on top of this, and of course you can always cut down these times significantly, but that really comes down to what you want to get out of the game. Dragon Age the Veilguard is a full-priced game, sitting around about £70, or around $60 if you're looking to pick it up physically, something that feels like a rarity nowadays. You can get some discount if you have an EA Play subscription, and there's also the option of a £90 deluxe edition, which includes a bunch of cosmetics and armor sets for you and your new best friends, if you want it. So is Dragon Age the Veilguard really worth it? Dragon Age the Veilguard never really earns its decision to move on from Solus. Instead of spending the game focused on a character we know and respect, with clear motivations and nuance who leaves room to be redeemed, we instead spend the game caring about two evil gods who like being evil because they're so evil. I say caring, but that's the wrong word. It feels like the Veilguard ducks away from the braver option in favor of a safer, more generic path. And that's a real surprise, as there are a lot of brave decisions in here. I mentioned before about choosing a city. A whole arc, I'd guess 5 to 10 hours or so of quests and exploration, is cut off depending on your choice. And no spoilers, but the Veilguard is bold in the impact of some late game decisions you make. The benefit of having the game be about two distant and flat entities is that it's actually about the good guys rather than stopping the bad guys. Making use of the maps and the smaller cast, the Veilguard mostly has you dealing with the smaller, more human stories in the various factions. That's slightly undercut by the world-ending stakes, but it allows for some of the best written side quests and smaller narrative beats BioWare has ever produced. Dragon Age the Veilguard is a Dragon Age game like no other, and that alone will put some people off. But it brings with it the traditions of excellent character writing, strong world building through narrative quests, and offers the most exciting combat the series has ever seen. There is a stronger version of the Veilguard in here, one with more Solus and companion quests that find a more natural ending, but the one we've got is still a worthy successor to Dragon Age Inquisition, and is a much needed return to form for BioWare. Dragon Age the Veilguard is a goodbye.